Welcome to the Choral Connection, a series of interviews with musicians with whom Maestro Harold Rosenbaum has collaborated over his 47-year international conducting career. We hope you are inspired by their artistry and the stories they have to tell. For more about the series, please visit www.haroldrosenbaum.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy today to have two members of Anonymous Four, two of the founding members, or maybe they were the two founding members. We'll get to that in a while, Ruth Cunningham and Susan Hellauer. And I'll tell you what I read on their website. Four women got together for a music reading session one afternoon in New York City in the spring of 1986. They wanted to hear what medieval chant and polyphony would sound like when sung by female voices. And that was the start of Anonymous Four. From the beginning, as they say, we committed ourselves to thematic programming and a collaborative process. Our original mission was to explore chant and polyphony of the Middle Ages. Eventually, we expanded our repertoire to include contemporary music and American roots music as well. Ultimately, Anonymous Four made 1,500 appearances in 49 of the 50 United States and in 35 other countries. The quartet made composer commissions from Pulitzer Prize winning David Lang, Sir John Tavener, Steve Reich, and Sir Peter Maxwell Davies. Developed crossover collaborations with Newgrass stars Darrell Anger and Mike Marshall, and with old-time music master Bruce Molsky. Sang the voice of Joan for Richard Einhorn's multimedia work Voices of Light, and appeared on Chris Tinn's Grammy Award-winning recording Calling All Dawns. The Anonymous Four women made 21 Billboard classical chart topping award-winning recordings of medieval, contemporary, and American music and sold 1.5 million copies. The last concert took place on December 22nd, 2015 at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. So as I said today, I'm thrilled to be speaking to two of the founders. And first, let me tell you a little bit about Susan Hellauer, who was a fellow student and good friend of mine at Queens College back in the late 60s and early 70s. While earning a Bachelor of Arts in Music as a trumpet player from Queens College, an increasing fascination with medieval and Renaissance vocal music led her to convert to singing and to pursue advanced degrees in musicology from Queens College and Columbia. Susan handled Anonymous Four's medieval music research and now teaches courses back at Queens College in the history of medieval, Renaissance, and contemporary popular music. She has appeared as a soloist with the Harp Consort and is a frequent guest instructor at early music workshops and college master classes. Susan also plays Baroque guitar and was volunteer EMT with the Nyack Community Ambulance Corps. Ruth Cunningham is a classically trained musician and a sound healing practitioner who combines these skills to improvise music that connects people to the healing and spiritual power of music. He specializes in improvisational sacred music from varied spiritual traditions in both liturgical and concert settings. She accompanies herself on medieval harp, Renaissance flute and recorder, piano, and shruti box. After leaving Anonymous Four for a number of years to study music and healing, Ruth rejoined the group in 2007 and sang with them until the group disbanded in 2015. She has performed and recorded with the Renaissance vocal ensemble Pomerium, and she is a regular member of the professional choir at St. Ignatius of Antioch in New York City.
Oops. St. James.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I'm at St. James now in New York
okay.
City.
That's okay. I used to be I rehearsed and performed at St. Ignatius of Antioch in New York City.
I was there for a long time.
Now I'm not there anymore. Likewise. She is certified as a cross-cultural music healing practitioner by the Open Ear Center and has been the musician for some of Ubiquity University's summer courses at Chartres Cathedral in France for the past 5 years. And of course, you can read more about them and Anonymous Four online. So Susan, you were a trumpet player who took up the cornetto, correct?
That's
I-
correct. Yes.
Uh, is that the most difficult instrument to control of all the Renaissance instruments? And is it easier for a trumpeter to make that transition than, let's say, a string player or a singer?
So the embouchure is very small, and a trumpet player can make the transition, but if you have smaller lips the way I do, it's a little easier. You see paintings of Renaissance musicians playing cornetto with it over to the side,
Right.
probably because the embouchure is so small, but I was able to play it in the center. It's you have to have a lot of faith because you'll make for about 2 to 3 weeks, you'll do nothing but make rude noises while trying to play it. And you have to then listen to recordings and be assured that it's possible.
Ah,
Time has gone on, they've made better instruments. So the instrument I started out on was very difficult to control or play, but the cornetti that are made now by fine makers in both England and in the US are really much finer instruments. And then, of course, with all these instruments of Renaissance and Baroque music, the secret was discovered in, I would say, the late 80s, early 90s, that you have a good instrument and you practice a lot.
right.
That really, you just have to
That's kind of
really
it. That
practice.
kind of says it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Then
you,
and now you have virtuosi playing these things.
so, yeah, because more people who are mainstream, who play, in professional orchestras, which basically don't play early music, are learning these instruments now too, right?
Yes.
Whereas 40 years ago, very few.
Well, it's also just, and Ruth can confirm this. This is, more income as regular orchestra jobs disappear. People have to be more versatile. I think you saw that, Ruth, with you studied flute, right? As
Well,
you
I was a Baroque flutist, and at first I was a Baroque flutist from conservatory, and it's true that the instruments were not so good then, and then they just kept improving, and also there are several program there are a lot of programs now that you can go and study early music, whereas back in the day there weren't so many. I was at New England Conservatory where we had a lovely performance of early music department in the 70s, but that was one of several of the first ones.
Right, right.
So I was just able to be a Baroque flutist and a recorder player there, whereas usually going to conservatory you would play modern flute, but no, I studied Baroque flute and recorder there.
Can we assume that all Renaissance woodwind and brass instruments, and even most string uh, Renaissance instruments that are played nowadays and have been played in early music groups are all reproductions? I'm,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, some of the violins
it
probably
might
are
be the old
old.
violins and maybe a cello here and there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to get that out there. So, Susan, one more question for you before I ask Ruth a few. Besides teaching the history of medieval and Renaissance music, you teach contemporary popular music. Um, can you sprinkle in some early music in your pop music course? And what does contemporary pop music mean? Um,
Well, I started out filling a void where it was many years ago at Queens. I think it must have been like 2006 or seven, and I was asked to teach a course in popular music. There's a textbook. There are textbooks of American popular music, and you just sort of take people through from the minstrel show to kind of now, and you can use a textbook. But when I was making my living as a software engineer in the 1980s,
oh, I didn't know that.
I was in the telecom industry, and my company went out of business on 42nd Street. I loved my job because I could work until 2 or 3, and then go to the library, and then go to Anonymous for rehearsal.
Yeah.
I had dental insurance and a
Yeah.
401k. And but my company went out of business in 91. Anonymous 4 was already chugging along, and two of the people there wanted to start a new company to pick up the maintenance contracts for this product that we worked on. And they asked me to join them as a technical person, and we were on our way a year later to a client meeting. We were doing okay from our little office in Newark, and instead of going to Atlantic City on the Turnpike and the Garden State, we started going through the back streets of Newark, and I said, Walt, what are you doing? I want to go see the Trump Hotel, which has just gone out of business. I want to go to the beach. And he said, silence, silence, silence. Finally, John turns around and says, two black dudes and a white woman, we won't get past exit 11.
Oh,
And I was absolutely I was gobsmacked, that word. I was just stunned. I was embarrassed. I was just mortified. So when I got the opportunity to teach popular music, I actually asked after a year to tweak it to be the history of race and racism in American popular music, because I always wanted to do something to make up for that horrible incident. You know, these two men were the salt of the earth. They were the best people you could imagine. And they had to worry about being shot for driving on the New Jersey Turnpike. So now the course has morphed into race and racism in American popular music.
wow.
Again, starting with blackface entertainment, Jump Jim Crow, and going right through the current times.
Right.
How these stereotypes have infected our culture. And I do that for John and Walt.
You do that for what?
John and Walt, my partners in my
Oh,
company. Yep.
you know, I recently saw a documentary, I think it was Ken Burns, on Miles Davis.
Oh,
And,
yes, I saw that.
yeah, and poor, speak about racism.
Yep.
Anyway, we can go on forever about that, but let me get to Ruth a moment. What is a shruti box?
Oh, it is it's an Indian instrument. It's a drone. It's basically a drone box, and you just accompany yourself. You fire up a drone and go, and
Okay.
it's like It's like the harmonium, but no, just the drone. It has that sound though. It's a reed instrument.
I'm sure our viewers are curious, as I am, about you as a sound healing practitioner. Can you tell us something about it?
Yeah, well, I left Anonymous for to study sound healing. Well, there's so much right now, and has been, but it's becoming more and more that music heals. Music is a very powerful force in people's healing. I mean, you just sort of use it. People use it every day. You know, it's like if they need to feel better, they'll listen to something. But anyway, I wanted to study it directly, so I studied with Pat Moffat Cook in Bainbridge Island, and we just learned about working with sound in different populations, and that's when I began to develop creating basically sound journeys for people just to listen to and to go inside. I mean, it's really how we use music. Music is very powerful, and Anonymous, part of the reason why I got into it is people would come up to me after Anonymous 4 concert and say, I played your music when my brother died. I played your music when my child was born. I put on your music at the end of the day. It's the only thing that calms me down. So there were so many stories of how chant affected people. And so I just wanted to work with music and find out more about it. And so I took being pickled in chant for 10 years and really developed my own style of singing and working with chant and improvisation using that style, which is very powerful. Chant, just because of the breath and all that, it really, really is amazingly healing music. So I just found out more.
Right. So was the sound of Anonymous 4 changed somewhat, or the some spiritual nature of it changed after you came back from studying, or was it?
I no, I mean Anonymous 4 has always been, has this really powerful way of it just really affects people. I mean, I left, but then I came back, and it was wonderful to come back and enter that world again, and with more knowledge actually about it. So
That reminds me, my father was in the severe dementia unit of a center for the last year of his life. He died at 97, bless him. But I used to go visit, and there were 44 people, and they would just sit in a room, the social room, all day long, and basically tongues hanging out and just not really speaking. And I came there and played piano, and I played all the old tunes, roll out the barrel. Half of them started
yes,
singing and tapping.
yes.
and smiling. It was unbelievable until my father said after the seventh song, he said, he didn't know who I was. He said, "Enough already." I said, "My own father, you know." So,
Right. But you can see, I mean, that music, I'm not a music therapist, but I
right.
work with, using sound and music in a very, I've played in similar things, and so you can see what a strong effect it has.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
amazing.
So let's talk about the spectacularly successful group you two started. Was it the two of you who started it? And then,
I actually came in like a tiny bit later. They'd already started, and then one of the people said they didn't want to. I don't know exactly how this happened, but she didn't want to rehearse as much as we rehearsed. So I think I sang in one of the, one of the first concerts as a sub. And the minute I started singing with them, it was like, oh,
right.
count me in. So, but
So
this is very
Susan-
early on. I think it was like about a year or something after
A
you.
little less than a year in, yeah.
Yeah,
who-
and so it was like, oh, this is mine. I need to be here.
Right, don't blame you. So Susan,
Yeah.
it was your idea or you and others?
No, actually, it was Johanna Rose and Susan Genvik, the second of whom left, because it was just, we were rehearsing constantly for no money.
Right.
We just
Well,
loved
we
the
did that
process.
in Anonymous 4 too. I mean,
Yes, I mean that yes, constant rehearsal because we just loved the process. We were
Right.
so happy, no offense, not to have a conductor.
Yeah.
right.
No. Listen,
No offense.
Yeah.
I wielded my baton at times in my
Yeah.
70th birthday concert. The concert started with a piece by Jess Wilder with 5 singers, and I just said to them, "Do it without me. You don't need me." No,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's more the process, the democratic process. Even though I would go and find the medieval music or transcribe it or find it and present it, it still didn't mean I was the boss of those pieces. It meant here's some pieces and everybody equally chipped in and also the kind of the way we wanted to sing chant a little more expressively, a little more based on the words rather than that kind of equalist that's very disembodied. It was more intensely communicative. Was
We
what
spent
were-
hours on
hours.
chants. Usually it's like what happens is people just sort of run through the chant and then they do what they think is the real music. We spent the hours on chant and would argue. It's like, no, this phrase goes here. No, it goes here. I'll leave the group if it doesn't go there. I mean, it's like we we really worked that chant and the text, and it was really a very beautiful process of working on chant.
Yeah.
So-
and Johanna and Susan, the other Susan, had done a weekend like a medieval fair kind of thing at a monastery, like a medieval weekend, and the music director asked the women to sing the Compline music, the evening chant. Only women, chant and polyphony. I believe it was English polyphony. And I mean, they were just so excited about that sound that we just had a couple of reading sessions. And I said, "Oh, I know. I was the teaching assistant at Columbia who did notation. I marked all the notation homework. So I would bring in the homework, and we sang through that. And I knew all, from my studies, I knew where to get the music. I knew where it was, where it was already edited, what I had to edit, and I was able to bring in endless amounts of music. And the reading sessions just developed. I think it was in the summer, and then we did a summer church service at St. Michael's Church where the choir was off, and that seemed to go well. Then let's do a Christmas concert, and then we did a few things, but there was so much work, and the other Susan she was coming in from Jersey. It was just too crazy for her, and she left, and then as Ruth just said, she sang as a sub, and we needed somebody, and we asked her, I think, right away.
Oh yeah, I think I didn't take
I
very
think
long.
we went to the
Hey.
diner around the corner and said, Ruth.
Hey.
Right. So unusual. So that would be so easy.
Yeah.
So, it was like revolutionary from the beginning what you did, because you treated chant in a more personal way, and besides the fact that women were singing it, it was the sound you got from, as you say, a disembodied chant that made it more expressive, and then that went into polyphonic versions of things. So that was the magic formula, right, for you?
Well, I would say
Mostly
that and
it is, yeah,
the concert, the way we did performances.
yeah.
In what sense? Certain format?
When we started, we had readings from the time, and we organized the programs so that they were thematic, according to a saint or a mass.
Right.
Or
And then a lot of the pieces you did were arrangements of, I mean, of SATB works or even TB works arranged for women. Is that
No,
true?
no, the vocal early, well, chant, of course, can be done by any
Yeah. No, I mean,
basically, but the polyphony from the 13th century, which is what we focused on for the first several concerts, 13th and 12th centuries, is polyphony, but it's basically equal voice polyphony.
mm,
SATB really didn't start to happen till like early 15th century.
hmm
And so 13th and a lot of 14th century music also can be done by, we were three sopranos and an alto. And one soprano at least could always sing a little lower. So, but our voice ranges are close, and we never pitch things up really high because then you can't understand the words. And we wanted to be,
right,
always have clear communication. But the music lends itself to any close voiced group, like altos and tenors could sing it, or tenors and basses.
right,
And we consciously avoided doing any music that was female identified. So no Hildegard, no Las Huelgas Codex, because we didn't want to get pigeonholed
right.
as a women's music group. And then, oh yeah, they're the women who do women's music. We just did.
we did the repertoire. We did the medieval repertoire, and that was like you never heard it in women's voices, which was
Right.
part of the novelty. In fact, for English Lady Mass, didn't we sort of have to get permission from the various
Oh yes,
musicologists?
from that Ernest Sanders, who is my main professor at Columbia, medieval music professor. He had done most of the transcriptions of the English polyphony because the English sources are very scattered. They were very economical, and they would tear the manuscripts into strips when the music was out of style, and use the strips to stiffen bindings or become fly leaves or whatnot. And so the work of putting the music back together is like a detective work,
hmm
not something I was really, why reinvent the wheel when this guy did it. So we asked him, what do you think? How would you
And
feel
women,
about four
yeah.
women singing this music, which was undoubtedly originally written for and sung by male singers. In England, it would be monks. In France, it would be priests, like deacons, professional singers of the church. In England, the monks cultivated polyphony. And he said, sure. And he came to the concert and said, I love it because in the higher range, I can hear the polyphonic lines weaving in and out. They have a more of a crystalline kind of character, and I can really hear what's going on instead of the very muddy sound of baritones singing it, which
Right.
could be great but harder. So he gave the imprimatur, and off we went. We would have done it anyway, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but actually, Robina, I think, sort of wanted some proof
yes, when
that
we
this
when
was
we did a
okay.
recording,
Yeah, the
we
person or
actually
producer
asked,
kind
yes,
of.
Alejandro Planchart wrote us a
And
note.
Blanchard also, yes. I mean, they had to have sort of like, is this okay?
A note for the recording
A
company.
note for the recording
But she
company.
said the French critics will kill us.
well, I was gonna,
Right.
I was gonna ask, did you get any pushback? Did you get any like
Oh
negative?
yeah, this
Yes.
is men's music. This is men's music. What are
Yes,
we doing?
I think it was American Record Guide, there was a regular reviewer named, the last name was Barker. It was a man
Oh
named
yeah, Barker.
Barker.
Appropriate. Oh,
And
okay.
he, I mean, I only know him from his reviews of our recordings, and he would inevitably say, it's very beautiful, it's beautifully in tune, haunting, great, expressive, all the nice things, and then say, but they should stop doing this. They are distorting the repertory. This is men's music.
Oh
They
God.
should not be singing it. You know, it's very pretty, but it's a wrong. They are anonymous
wrong.
mistake.
Yeah. Well, what can I tell you? You
Yes,
won out.
and
You won out there.
and we said, okay, that's a point of view, but you know, and more of it, more the thing that people reacted to more is what Ruth was saying before, was the way we put our programs together. They would run for about hour 20, hour and a half, no intermission. And in fact, we asked people not to applaud. They would contain music, they might contain readings or poetry. We'd start and end them usually with a procession and that arc, you know, like an arc, like a play or a novel. They would have a dramatic arc, and it was just one thing, and then it was done, and it was so different from the normal concert, especially early music
yes.
concerts. And what Ruth was saying about how they just, you know, in the other groups we were in, they'd run through the chant like Gloria in Excelsis Deo. Okay, now we get to
Yeah, right, whatever. Yeah.
so we balanced the chant and polyphony. That's, I think, more of what made us noticeable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of arc, a different arc now, going back to the Joan of Arc that you sang with.
Oh, yeah.
How was it for you doing modern music? I mean, making that transition, it's probably seamless, but.
Well, our parts were very medieval-esque in style. And, you know, I mean, the whole piece it's just a phenomenal piece. Yeah. But our voices of Joan were very, very chant-like and just incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Out of it, yeah. So it was not particularly out of our style. I mean, it was somewhat because we had to count and pay attention and get in at the right time and all that. But it was really amazing.
Yeah, Richard wrote it with us in mind.
He wrote it with us in mind. I remember going to his apartment and
right.
Here's this.
He played it on the MIDI and he said, I don't know, well, what do you think? And we go, we're in. In fact, the first thing that people ever gave us money for, was before Ruth joined the group, was incidental music to a play at the Symphony Space, and the music had just been written. I think it was even a female composer. I forgot her name, but it was very beautiful music. And that was the first time we got money to make sound in public, and it was contemporary music. So it's always been a thread in there. Yes.
Right. And you did very well. I remember once I read that for 1 week or for a month, you sold more CDs than Pavarotti. Am I getting that right?
Maybe, I don't know.
And you know, yeah, that was the big surprise in the February of '92 when English Lady Mass, our first wasn't our first concert, but it was our first recording, that we had to get the note.
Right, we had to get the note for that one. But it just really took off. And at that time, there was also the phenomenon of that, I don't know if you remember, that chant CD was sort of out after us, actually, or about the same time. So suddenly people were seeing that, oh, chant's really good.
Yeah.
And then we were there at the same time, at the right time. And for some reason, it just grabbed not just classical people, but New Age. I mean, it's like it just grabbed a lot of people, that sound. It was very amazing.
And do you think Anonymous 4 like influenced other productions, other groups, started anything? Are there other groups that imitated you or came do things like this?
Yeah, now there are a number of women's groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There was Discantus, I think, before us.
Yeah.
Again, they kind of concentrated on women's music. As a beautiful, Brigitte Len, fabulous,
fantastic
French group. And then there's the Sequencia Women's Ensemble doing Hildegard. And so it's not like it was unheard of, but we were not focusing on women's music. That was very conscious. And the way the concerts were produced, you know, I think it was, and then it was in the early 90s that we got recordings onto the Billboard charts, like number 2, number 3, they would rise up.
Great.
And because classical, then there was a split in the charts, either in the late 90s or early 2000s. There was kind of a classical, I can't remember what they called it, but there was traditional classical and classical.
And crossover classical or something. Really? And so we were like on we crossed over, and our audiences were definitely big mix of
Right.
people, not just the classical audiences, which of course presenters loved that because they draw in people to their concert series that would not have gone if they weren't Anonymous 4 fans.
Wow. So finally, because I don't want to keep you too much, but I mean, you stopped at the top of your game. I mean, what was the main reason you stopped the group?
In 30 years.
Yeah, I didn't think it was right to be on Social Security and touring.
Well, there's Dolly Parton, she's on Social Security, although she probably doesn't take the money.
Right.
You know,
Well, it had its time, and it
Yeah.
was really just time for us to
Yeah.
you
To
do
do
I
not,
think
you don't
do
want people saying Anonymous 4, are they alive?
Yeah.
right.
You know,
Like,
I mean, the last tour that we did, people said, my mother played your music when I was growing up. It's like,
yes,
yeah,
that'll-
that's nice. This sort of mid-30s person. It's like, oh
Yeah.
wait,
funny.
we were around a long time.
yeah. It was time for someone else.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. We learned a lot, and it was so much fun talking to you. And what a great thing you've done in your life. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome, Harold. Great to talk to you.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
For